This episode of Small Business Leaders Podcast is brought to you by Adams Lane Photography. Hi, and welcome to Small Business Leaders Podcast. My name is Audra Adams.
And my name's Lamar Powell, and we have a very special guest with us today, Alexandria Hicks. And the organization she represents is very important in our community, and we can't wait to hear her story.
Welcome, Alexandria Hicks, to this program. We are so happy to have you in the studio today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Absolutely. I want to really get into one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on and the importance of what you're doing in the community. You probably don't know this, but when we began this podcast, I went straight to the Chamber of Commerce, and I got the head of the Chamber of Commerce to sit down with me, and I said, if I wanted to highlight businesses or any kind of outreach in Kernersville, who would you have? And your name was the first name on that list. She was like, you have got to just really get their message out if there's a way. And so from the very beginning, I have it right here on my phone, she sent that right over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was very appreciative. Chris?
Yes, Chris,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It was Chris. So in the meantime, we've looked through all the things that we know about. There's a lot we probably don't know about, and that's what we want to learn today. Because whether it's a for-profit business or not, this is still... It's an organization, and it's a business, and it's a ministry at the same time. Mm-hmm. And it takes leaders to guide that, and good leaders. And so for your name to be on the tip of the tongue of, the Chamber of Commerce head, the head of that is telling me you've got some leadership qualities I want our listeners to know about.
Yeah, and it's important. What you do is very important in not only our community, but communities all across our country. And I know in our past, we are very familiar with ministry. We have roots in all of that. Also in our previous businesses, we've helped some local organizations like yours because we saw the importance of it. I know my wife's business dealt primarily with ladies, so we were very familiar with when issues would arise. And even our business would help as well. So
tell us a little bit about, first, what's the name of your organization, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
I got big shoes to fill, I guess.
No, not at all.
So our agency is Next Step Ministries. We have been in Kernersville for over 25 years now. So we celebrated 25 years last year. So we are a domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking victim services agency. We also kind of step out of that sometimes, because it does skirt into some homicide victims as well, territory like supporting families. So, we partner with KPD. Reports come in, so we do help victims that come through the police department. So domestic violence related reports come through to us, so we help that way. And we also operate a 24-hour crisis line so people can call in. We support them that way, and we do operate a safe house here in Kernersville, and that's what we're most known for, that and our thrift store. So we do operate a thrift store that kind of brings in revenue for our agency.
Which I thought was very smart.
Yes. I can say that we have been extremely successful with our thrift store because, with grant funding, you have to have a match with that. They're not just going to be like, hey, take this money. You have to be able to put up additional funds to say, hey, I can support ourselves without you giving us this money. We just need it too for other things. So supplemental. And so our thrift store does a great job of bringing in like 48 to 50% of our revenue, right?
Wow.
And so And we have the Kernersville community to thank for that, because they uplift us and through donations and just shopping, really. So, our thrift store has been very successful.
And that thrift store, it serves dual purpose as far as not just the percentage of revenue that it brings in, but those of you that you help to get back on their feet. They may come to you and have nothing.
Absolutely. It's very common for them to come to us and have nothing. So what we do is, a lot of times people think that, and this is something that I would love for the community to understand, is that wanting to donate items directly to the individuals in our house, which is great. But it's really nice for us to be able to offer a safe place for individuals to just shop. Just giving someone the freedom to go into a store and say, hey, you've got this amount of money, go spend it,
Oh, wow.
Go shop and get what you want. Like, if you're in a situation where you're being controlled, imagine what it's like to just get a gift card for $50 to a store and be told, get what you want, pick
That's
clothes that
awesome.
are you.
That's awesome.
And so, we have a safe space there where our clients, both in the community and then also in our safe house, can go in there and shop in a safe place. And it also serves as our kind of like a public space where we accept donations for our house. So, items like toiletries and laundry detergent and paper towels, things that we need to just operate our safe house, the public can go there and donate those things too. So our thrift store is just like, I say, the heartbeat of our agency for the public. It really is.
That and that is so wise, and even when you're bringing up, hey, I didn't even consider the emotional space that someone who has been victimized, to honestly what you just said, oh, here, you can do what you want. Have you ever noticed a time when they had it and they just maybe walked around and didn't know what to do with it?
Absolutely. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, because some of what we do is a little bit rough. But I had a client that I worked with that was in our safe house. And I think a lot of times too, people think domestic violence is just between boyfriend, girlfriend, or a partner or a husband and wife. But in the state of North Carolina, it's also family members, grandparent, grandchild. So I have, a grandmother that came to us in our safe house whose grandchild was physically abusing her.
Wow.
And she came to us and had not had access to money for 2 years. And she told me that she didn't really want to go buy anything. Her biggest thing was, I just want to go look at stuff. And so I set up a day for her to go to the thrift store and set her up an Uber so she could be like she was in a limo almost. It was a fancy Uber, right? And so we took the whole safe house together, and they went over to the thrift store, and she got the shop. And that was one of the moments where, she had this money, but she just didn't know what to do with it. If you could think about going 2 solid years with not even having access to money, what do you do with it? So, luckily they found kind of solace in one another and supported one another, and they were able to be like, these are things that would look really good on you.
Yeah,
and so she did end up buying some things and coming home with it, but it was difficult. I mean, she was there for about an hour. And our store's not that big. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing this yourself?
Ooh, so the field of DV altogether, it just kind of fell in my lap, to be honest with you. I did not start this. So I got my bachelor's degree in social work from UNCG. My senior year, you do what's called a field placement. And I actually started wanting to do prison reform. And I wanted to work with offenders. So I started on the offender side, and I was like, I'm going to change the prison industrial system. And then I worked with offenders, and I was like, I don't like this. I can't support these people and the things that they've done. So, I just tell people, as a joke, I switch sides. So, I did I worked with children first. So I did at-risk teens, so they'd gone through the system once. And then I did supervision for children who had parents who had lost custodianship. So I worked with them, and then that's where I kind of got introduced. And Next Step had posted a job opening, and then that's where I started. So altogether, 6 or 7 years now.
Wow.
Oof, I feel a little old now, but yeah.
Okay.
I've been with Next Step for a little over 4 years now.
And they've been in existence, you said earlier, for over 20 years.
Yeah, since 1998.
And their story, I think, on your social media, and by the way, all that looked fantastic.
Yeah, it did.
I really liked that. I learned a lot by going there and just scrolling through on your website and on your Facebook. And so there was a story there as to how that got started. Tell me about that.
So in the late 1990s, we had a school teacher here in Kernersville who was going through a domestic violence situation. And, if you could imagine at that point in time what Kernersville was like versus now, there were no real opportunities or organizations in place for those who were seeking help from domestic violence. There were avenues in Winston, but how do you get to them when you're a resident of Kernersville, right? And so there were no opportunities for her to seek help. And ultimately, she ended up losing her life to her abuser. And so seeing that, group community leaders came together, particularly Pete Kunkel from The Crossing, used to be First Christian, but he and a lot of other people in the community came together and said, hey, this is a serious problem, and we can do something to make a difference and make sure this doesn't happen again. And so he started Next Step Ministries, and we started out of a trailer here in Kernersville, and so since then we've kind of grown.
And so you're also, I'm sure you're having to deal with children as well.
Oh, absolutely.
With all of this, probably quite a bit.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, and I also like to do kind of a little bit of education piece with people about children because you have a major overlap. So particularly, children are one of the most vulnerable populations anyway. And then the second piece of that is like a woman who's pregnant is also highly vulnerable. So we see a lot of times men attempting to keep women pregnant to keep them in a position of vulnerability. So it maintains a position of power. So that's why
I'm having to just that may be like the normal everyday people around you understand that, but I have never had that thought even presented to me, and I am having some emotion about that.
I'm so sorry.
No, no, not sorry. No, I'm glad. Because
Yeah.
I want what you're doing is very thought-provoking that the public needs to be thinking this way. So please continue. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just want to say.
It is a heavy topic. So if I get to a point where it's like...
No, it needs to be talked about.
Yeah,
has to be talked
you
about.
absolutely can stop me. Because again, like you're saying, this is my world that I'm in every day. So, we're in it.
peeling the veil back. This has to be championed. So, but I do want to stop and tell you from the human side when something is like I'm learning something right now that I need to know and continue, please.
Yeah.
Please.
So, one of the things that we see a lot of times is one, keeping someone vulnerable. So, obviously children aren't vulnerable, but keeping a woman vulnerable is when she's pregnant physically. And then also we use what's called the power and control wheel as a tool to kind of educate the people that we serve. And it's like 8 spokes of a wheel. And each of those using kind of data of just working with both offenders and victims. They've compiled some of the things that they typically see in domestic violence that are just most prevalent tactics, I guess you could say, to keep someone. And one of the things they talk about is children, using them to manipulate and things like that. So, children, not only are they put in a situation where they're kind of pulled between, because again, that's still their parent.
Yeah.
Even if they're, being abusive, they don't really understand. It's still a parent. So we see that a lot in the safe house where they have behavioral issues, anger, aggression. And then also that trauma kind of shows in children a lot differently than it does in mom. And so, yeah, I mean, using children as like a pawn almost is also another part of that too.
And those children think, I mean, that's the only life they've ever known. And so they probably think that it's normal. And then when they get to the safe house, that's abnormal.
Yes. And so they don't really know what to do. I can say too, we've recently in the last year had a big influx of a lot of mothers of children. And I don't know if it's because it's post-COVID. A lot of moms with young kids. So you think about mom being in the house for an extended period of time. A lot of people had kids or got pregnant during that time because a lot of people were trapped at home. And I don't know if maybe that's why we're seeing this kind of post boom almost in like mother and young kids. But, we're seeing recently a lot of children that are nonverbal.
Really?
That are showing behaviors where they're just not able to like emotionally be where they need to be developmentally. And so now there are going to be times where that could be definitely attributed to some developmental delays in general, but that could also be attributed or worsened by trauma.
Sure.
So, it's complex. It's very, very complex.
What are the resources other than the safe house? Are y'all able to offer any type of counseling?
Absolutely. So,
Tell me about that.
We do a lot of like referrals for counseling.
Okay.
One of the things that we try to do for children in particular is we partner with Parenting Path. They're based out of Winston. So they do parenting classes and they also do like assessments. So for children, and then they'll do some like trauma type workshops, and they'll do counseling referrals for trauma specific type therapy. Family Services of Winston-Salem also has a counseling department type thing that they do that does specialize in children as well. We are in the process of working on an MOU, so partnership, a contract almost, with bringing in an outside licensed clinical social worker to work with the children in our home. So really wanting to do that one-on-one attention, bring in some play therapy and that kind of thing, because we're seeing, like I said, we're seeing the need increase. So we're seeing that trauma really show in children. And so we're trying to raise funds and trying to increase like donations, doing fundraisers and things like that to get the money to support that initiative. We've been working so hard over the last like year and a half to really beef up our children's programming because the need is there. I mean, it really, really is.
What are some of the avenues that y'all choose for fundraising? How do you go about that?
So right now, our fundraiser that we have running is a raffle for Father's Day.
Okay.
So the tickets are like $5 a piece. You can buy them with cash in our thrift store or through PayPal. The link for that's on our Facebook page. And we have 2 prizes that you can get. One ticket covers 2 chances at the prize. The first one is like a Father's Day grill package, brand new grill, $200 meat package from Windmill Acres Farm here in Kernersville, bunch of grilling utensils. The second one is our Tour of Kernersville package. It's just a bunch of gift cards from different businesses here in Kernersville that support us. So we are trying to push that right now. It goes until June 14th. But aside from that, we have our golf tournament in October.
Okay.
So what we're looking for right now are sponsors from like businesses and corporations and things like that. Our biggest right now is we're looking for whole sponsors. So these are just local businesses that can sponsor. It's like $150 for a sponsorship, and they can get their advertisement on one of the holes on the golf course. That's one of our biggest fundraisers, and it brings in, we really depend upon it to bring in a lot of funding for us. And we're hoping if we can increase the funding for that this year, that a lot of that money can go towards our children's programming.
So you are a nonprofit, so that can be a write-off for businesses.
Absolutely.
So, and that's a very important part of our community. The business is giving back to something that's so important. It involves women and children and a grandmother you mentioned. And so business really need to think about that. It's something they can do, especially a golf tournament. They can they're going to get advertisement for that. But it's just caring for your community. And to me, it's like giving back. And I know that has to be very important. To you guys.
Definitely. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. We are so fortunate to have the support of Kernersville. I mean, there are larger agencies that don't have the support and kindness towards, our community is so supportive of us. I mean, I can be honest with you, especially like our thrift store. There are larger agencies in our region because we partner with them that don't have the support from their community like we do. So I am very blessed to have that.
What is your main role? Like, take me through a little bit of a day in your life. Like her eyes just got big.
Like a next step day.
Yeah.
So I serve as executive director. So I do pretty much everything, a little bit of everything. So I oversee the operations of both the programming side and the thrift store. So all general operations of the agency.
I just want to say, wow, right there.
So a lot of it's grants. They consume me right now.
Writing and
writing, reporting, compliance stuff, which is just making sure the agency maintains compliance. So, and making sure our status is good, and then statistics, donor relations, that kind of thing, program evaluations, making sure client relations are good. We do case staffings. Quite frequently, we do those weekly.
That's a lot.
It could be a lot.
And you have a family as well.
I do.
So,
I'm married and I live here in Kernersville and I have a little girl.
So you are really, you're running a couple of empires. It sounds like to me.
Yeah.
For sure.
Sure. So I also saw too on, I think, Facebook, you had a list like for each month of items that you guys needed.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty cool because we did some of that back in Louisiana and helping a few organizations like yours. Tell me a little bit about that. Looked like for several months you had a list. Was that for the home?
Yes. So it could be a mix of both.
Okay.
But I would say 80% of that's for our safe house. We put that out the first week of every month. Really important to be able to do that. In the past, we had like a schedule for a whole calendar year, but I was like, that doesn't make any sense because our needs change month to month. So we went ahead and changed it to just posting it at the first week of every month because, there are needs that come up. Okay, for instance, 1 month last year, we had a mom come in and she was 38 weeks pregnant. She had her baby while she was in our safe house, not physically, but you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And when she came back, her baby had to have specific formula. Hey, we need this. So we put it on our needs list and we're able to get that formula donated to us. And so, that's expensive. So yeah, it's really important that, we have that connection with the community and can show them these are our specific needs. So.
And I think that's another thing a business can get involved in.
Oh,
as
absolutely.
Well, because I remember Heather's business one time, one of the local organizations we were helping, and it was so fun because they fed children that needed food. And so they did a mac and cheese month.
Oh.
So at our gym, we set up a table, end up having to put 2 tables up, and we advertised it on all our social media and on our screens inside, bring mac and cheese, bring mac and cheese. We had so much mac and cheese we were able to give to them, and it met that need, and it was something that was fun. And our businesses here in Kernersville could do that, and I'm sure many of them do that already, but they can do it within their own business, take on some of this and see what they can do.
Yeah. Local Roots has been great.
I love Local Roots
Yeah. So they've been helpful.
Great.
because I love coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's another reason.
There's another reason. Yeah, his daughter works there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And I love Local Roots
Yeah,
because
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So what's interesting to me about all of that is for y'all, it's a ministry, it's an outreach, it's all that stuff, but yet it still is a business, and you still have to run it within, and especially a 501c3. I understand the demands of what that record keeping takes, but what you've really done is you're mastering the art and moving along, mastering the art of asking and getting your ask in front of the right people so that your need then is fulfilled.
Yes.
And that takes a business approach, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. I think that even though it's not for profit, your mentality still is the same because you're still seeking out a way of making money. My mom actually owns a business. So my parents own a restaurant. And so I grew up in that, right? So I know a lot about them having to seek out customers and all that. It's the same concept, right? So you have to be able to focus on, and then another piece of it for us is volunteer acquisition. You know, you have to think about, okay, how do you, I don't want to say target, that sounds bad, but you know, how do you do outreach for volunteers? Who's your demographic? You know, the same with your donors as well. So the marketing is still pretty similar.
Yeah,
I mean, it really
same.
is. So, yes, it's a little bit different, but your, you know, approach is pretty much the same.
Yeah, and I think that's what strikes me is that you're using the technology that's available. You're systematically, you are established in the town of Kernersville, but now you're hopefully even after something like this, we are going to push that visibility. But it seems like you're already pushing the visibility and saying, hey, this is what we need this month, and here's a QR code that's already making it very easy to get these needs fulfilled. And so, yeah, that's very impressive to me.
Well, thank you.
As someone who has to do the same thing in my own business, I don't think I do it as well as they do it, for sure.
I can say my mom, I hope she doesn't hear this or see this. My mom is in her 60s. And she's better at social media than me. She's much better at social media marketing than me. I could learn something from her. But I try. I think me and then our community victim services director, we've worked really hard over the last year. So
well, you can really tell. Now, what does it look like for one of your clients that comes in and is in a safe house? Is there time limitations on how long, like what is the process kind of look like, just to dispel, anything that we might, or the audience might be thinking? Like,
that's a great question. So we are an emergency safe house, and that's really important to point out because a lot of times people think that we're like a homeless shelter, which is a lot different. When you're a homeless shelter, you fall under a whole different section of laws, like housing laws, than we do. So we're temporary, and that's about it. So, but what we do in our program, and every domestic violence program has the ability to set their own. So for us, though, we offer initially a 14-day stay out the gate. If we say, yes, come, we've got space, come to our house, we're going to offer you 14 days no matter what. And then after that, we do just ask that person meet with our case manager. There's no obligation beyond that. And so they work with our case manager, and we assess their needs and their situation, and then we just go from there. There is no set time frame. We
Okay.
don't do anything like that. Everyone's situation is different, and I think that that's what's most important. I think I don't like saying this because, again, it's so different, but I think around 3 months is our max at this point. But it really just depends
On the situation.
on the situation, the needs, and the biggest thing for us is imminent danger.
Okay.
If somebody is in danger and it's 3 months, if they're still in danger, they're in danger. We're not going to just put you in a situation where you're going to continue to be in danger. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
but I always tell people, yeah, you're going to get 14 days, period. And then everything beyond that, it really depends on your situation. Yeah, I mean, it really just depends.
Do you see a lot of repeat needs?
No, not in our safe house, to be honest with you.
That's good.
We do see chronic homelessness that are individuals that aren't necessarily, that may have experienced domestic violence, but are just in situations where they're experiencing chronic homelessness. And I think the reason why we see that is because there are not a whole lot of resources for particularly single women who are going through homelessness in Forsyth County. And I'm speaking for the other domestic violence shelters, because there are 2 more in Forsyth County that are not, in this area, but they kind of are in the same situation that we are. We kind of pick up the slack there, you know what I'm saying? Because there are not any other resources for single women.
So are you seeing an uptick overall? I mean, the way culture is, our society is, the economy, all these things. Are you seeing an uptick of, I know you said there was an increase with problems with the children they're dealing with, probably post-COVID related, but overall, just in your experience, are you seeing an incline, or is there some stability?
Last year alone, we received over 1,700 calls to our crisis line.
Wow.
Oh
And that's just us. So you can
And
imagine.
is that a county
Well, we
number,
receive calls from anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we receive, even the National Domestic Violence Hotline will route calls to us
Okay.
too. So, yeah, I mean, over 1,700 calls. What I can say is that we're seeing an increase in severity of cases. So you're seeing a severity in the actions, the violence that's happening, particularly between family members. And so that's what is very alarming to us.
So has anybody put their finger on
Why?
why?
I don't know.
Or we don't know.
I'll be honest with you. I think so. I cannot remember who it was that said it. There was an officer, and I don't know if it was Forsyth or Guilford County, but made the comment that victims are getting younger, and so are the offenders. So you're seeing a lot of violence from younger people now, and the violent acts are getting worse. So, and that's just trends. I'm not saying that people
Right.
who are younger, but that's just some of the trends that are coming up. You're seeing a lot more gun violence and things like that. But that's just what we're seeing on our side. We worked some pretty severe cases last year. I can say that.
How do you deal with that personally?
We cry.
Good.
We cry, especially the CPS stuff. I think last year I ended up having to make 3 or 4 CPS calls, and that's rough. That's really rough. I know that my community victim services program director, she's like my right arm, and she and I definitely go in my office and we just cry. And some of the reports that we get are overwhelmingly difficult, and it's also hard too. And I don't know how the officers of KPD do it. Like, I really don't, especially because I know they have families. Like, I have no idea, especially if you live here. You know the areas, you know the addresses, you drive by those houses. Like, I live here too. And so like I drive by those houses and I know where they are. And I have a
Right.
child who's here too. And it's like, oh my gosh, so that weighs heavy on me. I try to do a lot of self-care. I play guitar. And so does my husband. And we like to go to the mountains frequently and things like that. So,
I mean, you have to have compartmentalized places in your psyche to be able, and I can only imagine, I'm just seeing it, to be able to continue to operate during the day as bits of information or scenes are coming at you like that. And, one of my daughters is actually about to start training in the cadet program for Winston-Salem Police. And, we've already used counselors in our family for years. Family counseling it's just a good method for our family.
Oh, absolutely.
That we've had them in. But we just have already told her, and you immediately need to go ahead and get in with a trauma counselor that you check in with, because we know that you're going to see things that you can't unsee, and you're going to hear things you can't unhear.
yeah.
And you got to have some tools to figure out where to put that and let it be.
No, I absolutely agree. That's why, and I know this is going to sound bad, but I know these officers have to do the same thing where it's like you do compartmentalize. And I that's why talking about some of the stuff, I don't want to come off as cold, but it is just so normal for us that we just kind of like, separate ourselves from it because we have to. But that does not mean that there are not times where we just kind of, especially because you have your own child. Like it's so hard. The children is what gets me. It's kids. I can't. Once I became a mom, I was okay. I'd gotten to a point where I was like, I can handle this emotionally working with adults. And then once I became a mom, I was like, this is rough. My whole entire perspective changes as a mom. Your entire outlook changes, especially with kids coming in the safe house now, and they're younger. We have 2 young kids in the house right now. And that's, you think about it, it's heartbreaking. So
Yeah, and then to try to help these women pick up the pieces and make a puzzle that fits somewhere else other than that safe place. That transition, that takes a lot of courage and presence of mind for those victims to even get that far. I would think.
We do every other week, we have a licensed clinical social worker that is on staff with us, but she doesn't do counseling. She can't. She's not at a capacity where she can. She works full time, but she comes in every 2 weeks and does a trauma and children class with our moms in the safe house. And so the point of it is, how do you recognize trauma response in your child? And like, how do you help?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you see it? And then what are some ways that you recognize and then help them at all ages? So she specializes in children who, have experienced trauma, particularly domestic violence. And so teaching coping skills to children of all ages, which is just breathing.
Right.
And taking a minute. And then also just for mom who's going through her own healing process, how do I support my child while I'm healing too?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people think about mom, but, those children still have to heal too. And, so it's hard. That's why we really are trying to just build up our children's programming. I mean, it really is.
Oh, absolutely. I can see. The children's programming obviously is front and center for how, is there expansion on the horizon? Is there a world in where this ministry would want to expand? Or I don't know if that's a question.
Or what's next?
Yeah, what's next? Yeah, what's next?
So we did recently expand into sexual assault services. So we do support groups for both domestic violence and sexual assault, and we do hospital accompaniment for anyone who has been assaulted, both for domestic violence and sexual assault.
Oh,
So
man.
we are expanding that portion of it. We have like go bags or support bags, really, I should say that, but we fill it's like a book bag, and we fill it with a bunch of like care items and change of clothes and everything. And so we're trying to build our more emergency response, if that makes
Okay.
sense. So if we've been trying to work with the hospital. We recently did a tour of the emergency area of Novant here. So if someone comes in and they ask for a victim advocate or any type of supportive services, they can call us at any time. We'll be there. And so that's domestic violence or sexual assault. So we are looking at really beefing that up, so to speak. So just being available.
And how does that I mean, the staff that y'all would have to say, okay, well, 24 hours a day, we can get a call. Is that you getting out of the bed and going down to the hospital? Or, I mean, how, you don't give me exact numbers. I know some of this needs to be very vague.
Yep.
But, I mean, you have people on call 24/7.
We have like a pool,
Okay.
so to speak, if that makes sense. So there's
Yes.
like a list of us. We do have one person who, like our victim advocate, is, who also works more closely with KPD, who is the point person. But if they are not available, then we kind of just go down the list.
Okay.
And then whoever is available to make that call, we make it work. Which is surprising because there's a larger agency, not naming names, there's a larger agency who's trying to do their response, who's struggling right now. And they're asking us, well, how do you do it? Like, there's no how. We just do it. These people are in need. We make it work. And it's tough, because we all have families. And, but the need is there. And if we don't do it, who will,
Yeah, I'm not saying a whole lot right now because I have so many things going on in my head.
Me too.
Just because of my background as well. I was in the fire department, had to deal with a lot of this. In ministry, even teen ministry,
Yeah.
I cannot tell you the stories that both myself and more so my wife had to deal with. It's heartbreaking. But you care and you try to pour into these young people and adults as well. We had to deal with that as well. So I'm just thinking about it. And we talked about the police department. You have to have a close working relationship with them. And we talk about, individuals going through trauma, which is heartbreaking, but the first responders do have to deal with this every day. And that's the thing that is making me silent because I know those experiences. I've lived them. So I think that's why I remember not going down a particular street because of something that happened at home.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't want to see that home. So I went a different direction. And I'm pretty tough at handling that type of thing because of my makeup. But I think it's just a reminder to me of how important the community is, the support of the community, and understanding what the first responders are dealing with, what you guys are dealing with personally, and also the victims as well. I mean, they need the help, but those that are caring for them, it's a lot.
Have to keep it up front and center on people's minds.
And
Like,
then I think, but here's the other thing. What if we did not have this service? That, to me, is just unfathomable. To think that way. So I'm glad we do.
Yeah, but I think that there needs to be more, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, last year we served 145 Kernersville residents.
Wow.
So, and Kernersville's not that large.
No, it isn't.
So, yeah, we served other people. I mean, we served over 200 and something people last year, but like 145 of those were from Kernersville, and Kernersville's not that big. So, I mean, that's a lot. And I try to tell people, like, you could be going to the grocery store and the person next to you could be a victim of domestic violence and you wouldn't even know. And so we try to do things like put our stickers and stuff on the back of like stalls in public restrooms.
That's actually where I saw
Yeah.
one of your stickers.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah, I was like, we need to call
Yeah.
them. And end up, I told her about it. Said it's already in the Word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah. So we
Yeah, it's
try to
important.
do that, you know, give out our crisis line so that people will call.
What is that number?
336-413-5858.
And that is 24/7.
Absolutely. And so, you know, people can call in, and even if they're not looking for emergency safe house at that time, call for resources, ask us questions. I've had people call me and ask questions and they're not ready. Like, what if they call me and they say, like, I don't know, I don't feel good, but I don't know if this is okay. And we'll talk. I have had someone that I've touched base with multiple times over the span of 3 or 4 months. And then finally they call me and they're like, I'm ready.
Wow.
I had a lady one time who called me and she's like, I have a son named Alex. I'm going to write down this phone number and I'm going to put Alex next to it. So if he finds it, he's just going to think it's our son's new number. And I was like, that's smart, you know? And then she finally came, you know, and it takes time sometimes for people to plan, but that's also why we're here too, because do it safely. And we always tell people, like, you are the expert of your, you know, situation. We're not going to tell you what to do, but we're going to give you every tool we possibly can and all the support that we can to make sure you do it safely.
Is there any, like, for someone listening right now who might be on the fence and they might be listening to this and saying, these situations really sound familiar. It's looking like my life. Beyond calling that number, is there any first response that you would have to someone who might be listening to say, start thinking this way, or this is something you can consider?
So we do usually, if they're still in the house with them, we have like a couple things that we hit. So the first one is going to be like have a go bag and put a change of clothes, documents, so important documents, you know, your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate, same for your children, right? We also tell people take a phone charger or get a phone that they don't know about, like a track phone or something, and put it in there. We also say if you can start putting away a little bit of cash, put the bag somewhere that they're not going to find it. If there's an incident that happens, don't go in the bathroom or the kitchen. Those are two of the most dangerous places for you to be during an incident because you've got sharp corners, you've got glass, you've got knives, two of the most dangerous places for you to possibly be. And, you know, have a list of like options to potentially like contact somebody if you have a safe word with your children.
Oh,
Good idea.
yeah.
And at the same time too, if something's escalating, it's okay to do what you feel you need to do to keep you and your child safe.
Yep.
It's okay. No one's going to judge you if you have to do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. That's, you know, if you have to comply.
Yeah.
If that makes
And
sense.
So that you can wait for your opportunity.
Absolutely. Like if you have to comply with the things that they're asking for from you to keep yourself safe, then that's okay.
Yeah.
No one's going to judge you for that. And so, and then we're always here to help.
Wow.
Wow.
I don't have a lot of words.
I don't
Other than-
either. It's,
wow.
Yes. Just, yeah.
I don't know the statistics on, and maybe I should have looked that up before, on how many women do actually in their lifetime suffer at the hands of some sort of domestic abuse and sexual assault. But I know it's high.
It's very common for women to have experienced it, but to have also just known someone who has. as well. Like if you haven't personally experienced, you probably know someone who has.
Exactly.
And so that's a big one too. We have a support group that is really important because it could be the first opportunity that people have ever had to talk. A lot of times with sexual assault, people just carry that in silence.
Yeah.
And it's, one thing that people don't know about that is usually it's someone that you are acquainted with. It's not typically what people think about, oh, it's a stranger. Like, that's not typically what you see.
Which silences you even more. Mm-hmm. Because, then there's, if you spill the beans to anybody, then you've got a lot of other people that could believe you, could not believe you, may take matters in their own hands. I mean, there's just, or you're in a victim mentality that you're trying to protect your offender.
Yes. And then, or sometimes you're stuck in like a mindset of hypervigilance at that point, and you carry that, like you can carry some of that trauma that just starts to affect you. And so we just want to have a safe space for people to talk if they are ready.
Yeah. Also, I also want to mention this because I think it's worth mentioning. I have come across a lot. Well, I don't know if I'll edit this out or not. I'm not sure. But I definitely have been a victim of assault myself. And that was from, somebody close, like you say. Mm-hmm. And it did silence me for a couple of years. And those things kept occurring. And thankfully that, all of that is behind me, but it's not behind me.
Yeah.
You carry that kind of thing with you. And so I really resonate with, let's say you're married to that person. Well, that really wasn't rape because I'm married to them. And so that gives them every right.
Thank you for sharing that with me. That is a great point because that's where you see a lot of overlap between domestic violence and sexual assault. One of the first cases that I ever had here in Kernersville, absolutely Kernersville resident, she was actually brought to me by another nonprofit leader here in Kernersville and physically brought to me. And so, but she had expressed something like that too and didn't know that wasn't okay. And I remember being like, it's not, and I remember her just breaking down and being like, I didn't know that was not okay. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not. It's okay to be, to say no. And she just broke down to have known that entire, and I am, very proud to say that she's doing great. Now. Yeah. She's doing wonderfully now. But, it just took a moment of saying like, no, your feelings are valid.
Right. And I will say for me, it took a counselor looking at me and saying, do you understand that is not okay? And I'm like, no. It was the same thing. It was like a baby fawn, like your eyes are like this. And you're like, no, I thought that was,
yeah.
I didn't.
Well, especially for women in like a marriage, it's almost like, well, that's expected of me.
Yeah.
That's just my duty as a wife to do that. And that's a lot of the mentality that we see.
And I think that the mentality will never change unless we talk about it. And women, this is a very source of shame for a lot of women. And so amongst each other, you don't share that. And especially when it's in a domestic situation that you're in a long-term relationship or a marriage or anything like that. There's no guidebook. I've been to churches all over this country. I've sung, nobody ever mentioned any of that in the rule book. And
very true.
So I just think that it's important to continue to talk about those things and to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, I mean, it still feels weird. It still feels uncomfortable to say something.
Yeah.
But once you do, and somebody else goes, oh, thank God, you too.
And that's what's so important about like support groups in general.
Yeah.
Is, gosh, not that I want anyone to feel bad or to be victimized, but one of my favorite things in facilitating a group is being able to watch people come together and then just letting them speak and having them share those experiences and go back and forth and be able to like say like, no, I felt that too.
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? To be able to support one another and validate each other's experiences, because that's like a big deal.
It's huge.
And that's sometimes for people is when it clicks.
Yeah.
Right. And in domestic violence specifically, isolation is a major tactic, especially from family, friends, and even within your church family. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times people think, well, they go to church, they're in, they're there for service, and every Sunday, and we see them every Sunday at service, and they look great, but that's surface level, right? A lot of people don't really connect beyond that, right? And I think that a lot of it does go unnoticed. There's subtle details there that I feel like people just don't really pick up on.
But you guys are, and I just want to say thank you. I am so grateful that I was made aware of Next Steps, and I hope that this podcast reaches exactly who it's supposed to reach at the exact time that it's supposed to reach them. But I know that we will be supportive of your ministry for
Thank
sure.
you. Yeah.
And
I want to drive something else before we finish.
Yeah.
Because I think it needs to be talked about just a little bit.
Okay.
We've talked about this great need.
yeah,
The need needs, you need help. You
Yeah.
need funds. You need other things. So I want to ask this question, and it may be controversial, but I'm still going to ask it. So you get support from different ways, and you talked about the thrift store was a good way to get that. You talked about grants. How much support do you get from local churches?
So we are very lucky. The churches in the area do support us. So the Crossing is one of our biggest donors. Absolutely.
Thank you, Crossing.
Yeah.
The
Thank you.
Crossing is one of our biggest donors. United Methodist, so Main Street United Methodist is really a big supporter as well. Holy Cross does also support us. First Baptist does as well. And I think that's, we get usually, and maybe not like regularly, but the majority of the churches in Kernersville do at some point in the year provide. Sedge Garden also does support us as well. So we get quite a bit of support from the churches in what way that they can,
Yeah.
right? Like,
So it's just my opinion. There's churches everywhere around. That's one thing I see here in the Triad. There's churches everywhere, and the churches do have a mission. I know that full well, having been a pastor myself. But I think a lot of times many are hesitant in giving to something like this.
yeah.
And for whatever reason, and I want to applaud those that are,
Yeah.
because it's very important. But I think I'd love to challenge even more churches and ministries to look at this, because it's happening all around us,
It is.
and it's a great need, and funding is one of the most important things you guys need, and I think it needs to be a part of each. Every local church needs to be a part of this and helping with the solution. You have a lot of individuals giving to you individually. Do you see a lot of that?
I will say that our individual contributions decreased drastically when COVID hit. And then also, government funding was also impacted by COVID as well. We recouped quite a bit last year because one of our board members did the Betty Wilburn Ray Challenge last year. And so he raised money and then matched it. And so
Wow.
he did a great job of recouping some of the I shouldn't say losses, but some of the individual contributions that we didn't have throughout COVID. And so, but yeah, individual contributions, we do receive them. We do. And I will say that they're starting to pick back up, and we're so thankful for that. But yeah, we took a hit on those after COVID. We really did.
So I want to challenge folks in
Yeah,
that way.
individually.
COVID is over.
The
And
economy is
I understand
hard.
all that. It's over, and that's fine. But I think a lot of people don't think about how even if it's a small amount, a month, give $10 a month or $20 a month. If enough people do that, that would meet a great need. Or 100. There's people in our community that can do that. No doubt about it. Maybe they don't think about it.
We tell people, like, I can't even stress the importance of this. Like, $25 alone covers the transportation needed to take someone to go file a 50B, a protective order. That can be the difference between an individual having legal protections for herself and her child, and it can also mean the difference between her having ownership of her own home to stay in. So $25 does that, and that's the biggest thing for us. It helps us with transportation. It helps us get someone a grocery store gift card for a mom who maybe had just fled with nothing, but has, maybe a friend's house to stay at, and she needs to feed her kids. Okay, we're going to give you a $25 grocery store card to go get you some groceries for you and your kids. So, even $25 makes an enormous difference for an individual. So
Yes, it does.
that's what we try to tell people. I know that it seems like, oh, okay, I make a donation. It has to be. It really doesn't. It's the small things that add up that really matter to us. It really does.
Well, as our listeners, I hope that some of you have felt a call,
Yeah.
and that you'll answer to that. Tell us the your website. What is your website?
Yes. So our website is nextstepdv.org. So that's D as in David, V as in victory, .org.
We'll put it up on the screen
And
as
it's
well.
next step.
Yes. Next
Yes.
step.
Yes. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here, and I hope that we're going to champion this. Like, it's very near and dear, and you did a beautiful job articulating every
you.
part of this that can be triggering conversations. I understand that, but they have to be had, and you stepped up, and you are leading that organization, and I want to just say thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we'll see y'all next time.
I'll see you next time.
Bye.